The little group consists of Angela Espinosa, of Angus Jenkinson, who is a fellow of the Cybernetic Society of the UK, is not here, and myself, Jose Perez Rios, and John Walker, and actually someone is missing, I don't know why, which is Steve Bruis. Steve Bruis, sorry?
It's okay.
That's okay, yeah, I'm fine. Steve Bruis planned to be here, but it's obviously he's ill, so we will do his part of the presentation. We were asking ourselves, well, creativity and usability, novelty and usability was said in the introduction. We did not try to be creative about the model itself, we are always trying to be creative about the usability and the usefulness of the model. That's why we focus on application questions. So our question here was, why is the vital system model not a mainstream model in the practice of management, nor in the academia? If our assumption holds true that there is an urgent need for it to immediately improve the effectiveness and impact of organizations of all kinds, why do we still see little practical application? How can we foster the applicability of the VSM, and what vernacular supports its dissemination? Actually, there's not a PowerPoint presentation here, it's just an electronic version of our posters. So, we started with creating a model of VSM dissemination, a VSM dissemination model, a systemic model, and out of that we found out that we need to focus on 4 essential variables, which are demonstrated here. First one is attraction, awareness and attraction, so the promotion, the communication, to demonstrate the utility of it and to attract new community members. The second variable is the quality of VSM work, to build a global body of trainers, certify globally advertised trainings, and provide quality filtered sources of knowledge. One is to community members, facilitate development of an open, welcoming community, provide information and links for VSM trainings, teachings, and develop a community of practice to share application knowledge. And the last one is implementation support, provide VSM software, apps, so to speak, to make it easier to implement it, provide easy to grasp steps, and provide also a decision support, a new form of operations room, so to speak. Now, for each of these 4 topics, we have 1 additional posters. I'm going to introduce the first one, and then Angela will take over from me, and John will do the next one. First of all, about awareness and attraction. Regarding awareness and attraction, we came up with the conclusion that the main obstacle that hinders dissemination of the VSM is its misconception. So the question, what is it actually, that vital system model? And I can speak for myself, it took me 20 years to find it out for myself, what it is. The letters are too small, it's not a PowerPoint presentation, it's a poster, right? The letters are too small, so I'm gonna read it for you. There are 3 misleading perceptions. So typically, if you try to convince somebody, being business or non-business, small or large organizations, to start thinking and working with a vital system model, we get typically 3 reactions. And the first reaction is that people put it in what they already know about organization, which is structure, org charts, and process, today agile processes. And then they say, well, we don't need it because we have structure and we have process already, and that looks rather complicated, so why bother with it? The second reaction is, the VSM is a rather academic approach with a complicated language that you would have to learn first, too large and complex, therefore not practical. Second reaction that we get typically. And the third reaction is that it's perceived as an alternative and substitution for what is there already. Now, what we came up with in our discussions is there is actually quite a simple remedy for these misconceptions. The first one is to emphasize the need for an organic rather than a mechanic model in the VUCA world. And the mechanic model is the machine to organize a company, a firm, whatever it is, like a machine. That's a traditional model with command and control structure, whereas the 21st century was saying, well, we need the organism as the role model for organizations. And then it becomes clear that an organism has an anatomy, org charts in a company, so to speak, metaphorically, a physiology, the processes, but there is also a neurology in a functioning organization. The neurology, the control and communication structure, is actually the one that helps organizations to deal with complexity, which is the main problem nowadays, to steer an organization through rough winds. So if we say it's not a substitution for what you have, and it's something different than org charts or process organization, it's a third dimension of organization that you haven't been dealing with in a systemic way. It's about the decision structure in your organization, and it's about the communication structure in your organization. And then they start becoming interested in. That's evidence-based, so that's the experience from the last years, that we really gain attraction of people if we position it the right way. On the other hand, if we don't position it like that, we're getting lost in saying, well, we don't want new models, and it's just a new fad, and it's too complicated to learn the language. A different dimension needs its own language. You can't express what needs to be said about the control structure in terms of org charts or in terms of processes. And therefore, having an academic background, a scientific background of the world, becomes an advantage rather than a disadvantage in the end. So that was our first topic, the remedy of misconceptions of the viable system models, which really seems to work in practice to get people interested in. And I hand over now to Angela for the second topic.
Can we interact with that now?
Can we interact with that now?
So we're meant to be able to interact with you, aren't we? You've cheated, you've put up a PowerPoint.
Yeah, good. Exactly, everyone wrote just one poster. No, but we'll have a session after the three presentations, then you can go into discussion. So you will have room for that, but please park it for a while. So just a few minutes.
Later on. Angela.
It wasn't the intention to do a PowerPoint read. We discussed it before this because we didn't know we were going to get the points. And we were going to put the posters, and then Martin said, well, I have the posters in the screen, and they say, well, let's put the posters in the screen. So sorry about that. But the idea of this is precisely to invite you to help us in the thinking that we do. I mean, it's only 6 of us who've been thinking about this, and I'm sure that for all of us in this community, this is a very punchy question, because it's the kind of question that everybody is asking always, both in academia and in businesses. So the idea is that after this we will have fishbone kind of discussion with all of you, and after that we will go to the posters. We'll distribute these posters, the detailed posters, around. Martin, John, and me will be around, and the idea is that to invite you to put post-its in the posters, and to engage with you with ideas. So take notes of things that come to your mind when we are presenting, and then we can continue the conversation. Okay? So regarding the quality of work, the questions: how to develop high quality content about the BSM, how to increase the number and quality of BSM education and trainers, how to get a stronger diffusion of BSM and its benefits through social media. These questions are the result of the conclusions that we were reaching. First of all, we are aware that many of the content about the BSM is, first of all, cryptic. We all know that Stafford was a genius, but Stafford's reading is difficult. You need to have a lot of time to really be able to read the Stafford Beer's books. Mostly people who have the opportunity of doing a PhD on Stafford's work manage to have the time to go deeply into the reading, but this is a big barrier. On one side, the original writings are tough, difficult, no? Even if they are marvelous. Stafford once told me, when I was doing my PhD and I first met him, I was terrified of meeting him because I knew I hadn't understood a lot of the BSM. And I said, please, Stafford, don't ask me questions about the BSM because I'm not sure that I have understood yet. And he was laughing and he was saying to me, don't worry, it will take you several years to read, to understand, and you will have to read the books many times, not only once. So, I mean, and this is true. But this is a private story. The reality is that we want this to get out, and then how do we do it? So first we have a big dilemma in terms of the quality of the existing work. I think that for me as an academic it's been a big pleasure to discover that the popularity of BSM is just growing. Yeah? I did an analysis, I put, for instance, a list of BSM papers and BSM books in the Metaphorum webpage, and I made an analysis of the number of papers that are appearing each year, and from 1970s to 2024, the numbers are just growing exponentially, which means that the BSM is more popular than ever, without any doubt, which is not the case for all the systems approaches. So this makes us feel that still people are finding interesting stuff. But we need to find ways to disseminate, not only in academia, but in business. In business, Martin, I mean, we have some people here that know the work that Malik Management did for many years, and here in the German world in particular, the BSM has been used in practical terms. There are some of us in Latin America that also have had a lot of exposure to the BSM. Some of us participated in big projects, public projects, community projects in BSM. So there is also, let's see, a few bits of the world in which there is a lot of application, and many of you are consultants, no, that have been doing BSM, but the problem is the consultants not always want to share the work. No, there is this dilemma between the privacy and the knowledge asset that you have as a consultant and how this can be shared. So this is, the question is, how do we develop high quality content? The issue of curating the quality of the content is very important. Many times we see papers that have been published in OBSM that are coming with really not very well demonstrated arguments. Then there are reviewers that don't see the problems and pass on across these papers. So we have an experience with John reviewing papers and saying, no, this is completely incorrect. This person hasn't understood the BSM, rejecting the paper. 1 year later, the same paper published in another journal with another reviews, and even better journals. Yeah. So that's a question that we were just asking the question. How to increase the number of quality of BSM education and trainers? Again, we know that there are universities in America, in Europe, that have been teaching BSM, very little number, and not all of them have succeeded for a long period of time. So academically, now in the UK, we have the systems apprenticeship, no? That we are teaching BSM, and we have 4 universities teaching BSM. I taught BSM for 20 years in the University of Hull, the Center of System Studies, and there is Lancaster and there is City University. So in UK there are a few universities. Here we have St. Gallen and a few other universities around there still teach, but we don't have a way of doing it outside the realm of academia. And in academia there's always been the contradiction, no? The universities business school want to stick to international curriculum that is managed by accreditators who wouldn't like innovation and creativity. Not too much innovation and creativity in the programs, so that is a deterrent to sort of come up with new curriculum. Sometimes it's very difficult to produce it massively. So we have all these questions, so how can we increase it? And we are gonna tell you, John is gonna tell you a bit more about this idea. With Martin, Christian, John, and Mark Lambers, we've been creating this idea of creating a cooperative, that is what we are doing on the third day for those of us staying with us, to sort of qualify BSM training and to find a way of disseminating, so qualified trainers can go and repeat the training, and we can start sharing between all of us, no, the way we teach, our resources, no, our practice, and learn together. So that's our dream. That's, let's say, is the new Metaphorum ambition, to try to move that. And this will be, the cooperative is a trading organization, so there will be paid courses, no? But hopefully for all kinds of different people. So there will be people, some courses in Europe that will have different fees than those of us that will be teaching perhaps in Latin America, and so on. So we are designing it, and the idea is also to invite you to participate, to co-design this, and to produce this new idea that could be a solution to this. How to get a stronger diffusion of BSM and its benefits through social media. Again, we haven't been very good in social media. Metaphorum in particular is a community of volunteers. John, me, Elena, Peter, Juliana, Pedro Pablo, the ones that John Waters, we all are the Metaphorum Council, and we do it for free. We've never got a penny from a conference, from anything. We do it just based on the passion we have for these ideas. But again, we don't have enough resources to produce high quality things in social media, and we need to change that because people, nowadays everything happens in social media, and then you go to social media and you see some funny videos about the Stafford beer, and then you say, who was this guy? And then perhaps you lose interest. So how can we change that? How can we start collaborating to produce more interesting videos, more interesting material, more up to date with the technology that we have had, and enjoy more and use better the technology? So those are the questions. In terms of software, we are aware that we need to develop, hopefully, a free software for real-time management. The CyberSync project was 50 years ago. It was dreaming what would be possible if we had the internet and the technology we have now. We have the internet and the social technology that Stafford didn't have in those days, and now we need to use it. We need to use it to complement the VSM, because the Stafford was one of the pioneers in real-time management, in agile management. So how can we put together these ideas and create some software, hopefully a free software that people can start using in their business? Free handbooks, free ways that people can understand these ideas. We all believe here in the community, in the Metaphorum community, that these are very powerful ideas, very up-to-date ideas, more important here than ever, but we need to work out, creatively find two ways out. That's why in the first poster we were thinking about a forest, and then forest with all sorts of obstacles. How can we transit, how can we walk through the forest and find out a new horizon for developing and disseminating the VSM? And that's the invitation is for you to help us to think together with ideas. Each one of you, please write post-its. Now in the conversation, you can come in, and then in the poster, you can come with each one of us independently to talk about these specific topics. Okay? John?
You got the next poster?
No, you do yours, and then I'll do the final one again.
Okay.
That replaces Steve. No.
Okay, this was another aspect of the conversation we had about how do we get Stafford ideas out there, how do we encourage dissemination, how do we get more conversations about the VSM and Teams integrity. And Angela, particularly with a bit of help from me and from Elena, have been running Metaphorum for 20 years. And in lots of ways it's been very, very successful. We've gathered a very interesting community of people, many of whom are here today, and welcome everybody. And just to say, coming to the conference, you automatically become members of Metaphorum. So the community grows, and we feel it's really important to provide some sort of context where people who've discovered the VSM in isolation can come along and say, okay, I've just been read Stafford's books. People like Steve Morlish, who turned up at a meeting and said, this stuff's just amazing, I don't know who I can talk to about it. So to have this community where people can get involved, discuss things, develop ideas, find new contacts, find new people to work with, and just come with this whole peer group of people who are passionate about the VSM and about Teams integrity. And there's a whole lot of ways that we've been developing this over the last few years. We started doing webinars 2 years ago. Was it 3 years ago? 4 years ago. 5 years ago. We've been doing webinars. They've been great. we've been very surprised. With great trepidation, we got in touch with Andrew Pickering, who wrote this extraordinary book on early cyberneticians. And we said, you probably don't know Metaphorum, but would you think about doing a webinar for us? And he said, I'd be honoured. And we sort of felt, wow, we know maybe we're making some sort of impact here. So we're finding all sorts of people that we regard with a great deal of respect, who are very happy to come to Metaphorum. And I think this idea of a supportive community is important to pretty much all of us that are involved in Stafford's work. And particularly those of us that knew Stafford, who still have that feeling of being involved with Stafford Beer, which was probably one of the most important experiences for all of us that ever met him. So really that's it. We do conferences, as you know. We're starting special interest groups, which we were hoping to have up and running by now, but there were a number of technical problems which have delayed it. And we've got a whole lot of different projects on the website. We're working with Peter Tuddenham on the archive. We think it's a great idea to have a cybernetic archive. And I think probably that'll do. I think I'll truncate this because I take Jonathan's point that we're supposed to be interactive, so I'll limit my discussion to that and pass back to Angela.
Well, I'm in trouble here because the author of this, the leader of this part is Steve Ruiz. As some of you know Steve Ruiz. Steve Ruiz is one of the early cyberneticians, also very close to Stafford Beer, and one of the most amazing practitioners that I know of. He implemented fully the VSM and the cyber filter software in British Telecom, and he's an international consultant doing the same sort of things in America and in the United Arab Emirates. Steve is now into, he's an amazing programmer. And he has developed ways of visualizing the VSM and presenting the VSM in visual ways to the management, all based in data. So he takes the data of a company, a multinational company, he produces key performance indicators, and he maps the VSM based on the data, and he produces visualizations that are there for the managers to make the decisions, so real-time decisions. So all the reasons of Stafford, he had made them practical in terms of technology. And now he is doing something extra that is our next topic, actually, that is how can we use artificial intelligence with the VSM. Yeah? This is the kind of figure that he is producing, and he, in this moment, is using artificial intelligence to interpret the data, to generate algorithms, yeah, and to generate the reports and to do all the interactions with the managers. So we are, and not only that, but he is beginning to clarify some of the aspects of the VSM, because one of the things that another obstacle to dissemination has been the critiques to Stafford Beer. There have been a lot of critiques over the years. You know, many of you that are in academia may have heard of Mike Jackson, Werner Ulrich, Jerome Ijley, and people that are into critical system thinking. I know we have here more than one people into critical system thinking. And if it's true that critical system thinking is very important, and we are the first one that want critical system thinkers, it is true also that some of the critiques have not been well-based, well-documented, and there has been not a clear enough response to some of these critiques. So things like pretending that the VSM doesn't incorporate individuals, yeah? While the VSM is based on understanding individual cognition. And when you have been a consultant in a VSM consultancy, the first thing you do is to create a space for effective conversations with people representing all levels of the company, including all sorts of power issues. So you really create very strong boundaries, very clear boundaries, and you involve participation, because it's the only way to learn with the VSM is by getting into deep debates about what is the company. Perception, interpretation, intuition, there are all things that proper practitioners, VSM practitioner, will take into account and will do it very clearly. So many of the critiques that the VSM didn't incorporate individual, doesn't understand cognition, perception, intuition, doesn't allow conversations, participation, and doesn't understand power in particular is a little bit crazy. Because if you do a proper VSM implementation, you need to change, you will challenge the power structure. And you will do it much more deeply than any other systemic approaches, even some of them that say that they are trying to work into generating more equity. So in that respect, overcoming some of these critiques is important, and Steve is also developing some clarifications based on the state-of-the-art theories on neurology and neurocognition that explain the VSM from a, let's say, from a more modern way of understanding neurology, in which issues like sentience, cognitive, emotion, are very clear, depicted within the VSM, and are explained both in a scientific way and in a psychological way. So this is the work of Steve, and he's explaining, for example, the idea of adaptation based on the idea of surprise. No, so how do you to really adapt? You need to be able to respond to surprise. And so he's creating a really interesting new perspective on the VSM. So that's the work of Steve. I hope I haven't completely mis-explained what he tried to say, but this is the other part. And in practical terms, two things important: developing software that can be used to update the state-of-the-art technology in businesses, and developing, exploring artificial intelligence and VSM. That is going to be, we have already agreed, the next topic for this VSM application research group, and we want to invite this community as well to join us in this idea of getting groups of people that have interest, that want to develop, share interest, and hopefully by the end of this conference we will find some clusters of people that want to continue developing. And now we have the technology in the Metaphorum, thanks to Christian over there, who have helped us to improve and create the possibility of having more online conversations, new kinds of webinars, and so on. So this is all, I think, and so it's up to you to do the next facilitation.
You're impressively perfectly on time.
Oh,
Never expected this. We will now go into the fishbowl session. Those of you who are not familiar with this kind of format, it's quite focused format, I would say. So we have 3 experts here.
4 chairs.
And 4 chairs.
So we can count.
So for you now, it's the chance to go into discussion before we go into the deep dives with the post-its. And the idea here is, I'll do an example. So you can take the chair where no one sits on, and you can ask a question and start a discussion. And if you're finished with your question discussion, you leave the chair open for the next person. So my question would be, this morning we have learned about creativity, and there's an educating part of it. So you have started with the coach certification. So I would be curious how many people already have passed the exam, and what is your aspiration for next year?
Yeah, awesome.
Well, yes, we want to.
Okay, we started piloting these certifications, and so far Krishan helped me out. I think it's about, you did some certifications, so it's about 200 people are certified VSM coaches by now, worldwide, globally. And maybe we have another one, which is the VSM designer, which requires some practical experience also, which would be a next step of our VSM coach. We have about, especially in Bosch, we have about maybe 60, 70, something like that, 50 maybe, I don't know exactly. And the expectation for next year is dependent on all of you, because we invite everybody to become a VSM trainer, to do your trainings, and globally with your audience, geared also to your audience, and give out certification. So it depends a little bit on how fast we can build more VSM trainers.
Just to complement Martin's, our aspiration is, in this moment we have 2 certified trainers, Martin and me. No? We are the only ones that are fully certified, so Martin has done most of these trainings. I have a large project in Colombia, so I have done only the introductory certification, and a smaller group with a 3 days course. We will explain later the certification process. But in terms of creativity, the idea is precisely to expand the boundaries of what is VSM and how to use the VSM, because the applications of the VSM, as we are going to see in the next 2 days, are in many, many fields. So not only business, but society, not only traditional academic, but practical, not only business, but individuals. So hopefully very creative in the boundaries. Yeah?
Okay, question perfectly answered, thank you. And I think you had the first question, so maybe you will take the seat at the start, so you can hand over the microphone to him.
No, I don't want the microphone.
Or
Can you remember, Joseph?
Sorry?
Can you remember?
So you can throw me off here when I've finished, but I have a very different viewpoint from what you're, not very different, slightly different. Say what you do and do what you say is a fundamental principle. If you look at the Metaphorum website, it says you want to create a community of practice to expound Stafford Beer's ideas. That's what you've done. You've done it. But you've done it as a club.
Sorry, use the microphone, please.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Maybe it's easier to take this one.
So I believe in the principle of say what you do what you say. If you look at the Metaphorum website, it says we want to create a wellness community of practice. And the Metaphorum, the clue is in the word forum, which says it's a forum for discussion. So that's running the forum, not what is said at the forum, if you see what I mean. Now the trouble with that is, when I looked in my research at societies or so on, what I found is that clubs involve lots of people who don't have to do a lot of work, and a few people who have to work like mad. And the clubs die when you stop. So the first question I would have is you need to look at making the Metaphorum viable, your own words. So I hate to say it, but you need to be financially independent. It's the first thing. Now I used to do a lot of change management projects. I used to get asked to call in and look at them. And the first thing I would always do with the management team is ask them a series of questions about their expertise. And I'd say, right, have you got a financial expert on your team? Have you got a marketing expert on your team? Have you got an education expert on your team? Because what you always find is the HR department or the finance department doing their change program have put a whole lot of finances together, or a whole lot of human. You need a spread of people doing it. But I would suggest, and I put a paper forward to you to go with this, that you create a bottom-up system, because they survive. If you create a top-down system, I watched endless change management programs with top-down, and in fact, I used to get called in, and I'd say to them, we're going to do this, and I'd say, right, have you seen your last project that you did? And I'd put up something that was almost identical, and 10 years later, they're trying to rerun the same project. So, Tipping Point by Malcolm Gladwell showed you how to spread an idea. It wasn't very scientific, but it was really interesting. And he said 3 things: salesman, stickiness, and context. Take context first. The world is really struggling to understand complexity. It's been brought up. So when you looked at what the issues were, the serious issue is that politics, our society has now gone as far as it can with the scientific method of reductionism and determinism. Sorry, I'm talking a lot. Please interrupt me if you want.
Yeah, what is your concrete? What is the question? So you
I haven't got a question. I've got a statement.
First question. Yeah.
because I disagree with what they're saying, so I can't explain that unless I ask.
Okay, so you say you're disagreeing, and then hand over, so we can go on to discussion.
I'm having a discussion.
Yeah, but at the moment
I don't want you to control me. I don't want you to control me. That's not what a forum's about. You're trying to work me like a glove puppet. I don't want to be worked like a glove puppet.
But
I think, and I'm objecting.
But I think your point is clear.
Yeah.
So you disagree.
So I've got two things to say. Okay. So first of all, context is really important. Sorry, go ahead.
I vote for letting you continue.
Okay. So I'll be brief.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine.
So shut me up if you want to. But normally people have to. But context. We've got a world that can't deal with complexity. That's what we do. You've got everybody is brought up in a scientific method, reductionism and determinism. And so if you've got a choice of books, you're at the airport and you've got 7 simple ways to be an effective manager, and Stafford beer, which is going to take you 20 years. Which book are you going to pick up? That's your problem, is that we're not explaining it to people, and you're never going to explain it to people unless you find. So the first question is salesmanship. How do you sell it? And I think the only way to sell it is an app that is really useful to people, that does things. It doesn't use fancy words, it doesn't use variety, it just does things to help people. And the second one is stickiness. If you remember the 3 things that Tipping Point said, it's got to stick, it's got to be addictive. So what you've got to do has got to work, and it's got to. People have got to say, "Have you seen this?" But that's not what you're saying you're doing. You're saying you want to run a Metaphorum.
Thank you, Jonathan. Very good points. The response is, we have been in Leuven in 2022. We had this understanding that we needed to see the Metaphorum as a viable system. We spent the last 2.5 years trying to map ourselves as a viable system. After about a year of trying, we concluded we are not a viable system. And we're not a viable system because we are a group of volunteers who doesn't have all the resources. Okay? So we said, what can we do about it? And that's when the idea of the cooperative started. We are aware that we need resources, we are aware that we need this kind of expertise. For those of you that are starting for the training day, I will present the DSM of the Metaphorum as it is in the moment, and we are aware of the kind of expertise that we need. Yeah? So we are looking for people who want to volunteer and bring us these kind of capabilities. None of us is an expert in finances, none of us is an expert in education. Yes, I am an expert in education. Some people have different kind of expertises, but we do know that we need to develop certain kind of things. We do know that we need a financial robustness, and that's part of the idea. How do we generate that? Yeah, and we do know that we need the technology, and that's what people like Steve is helping us to do. And hopefully, we will find ways to do a technology like is open source, that everybody can access, and that we can put in an application in a phone. So all this is in our dreams. Still, this invitation is to help us to clarify these dreams, help us with ideas of how to can convert these dreams into practice. We're at that stage, but we are, and your analysis of the DSM and your case study is very useful. You need to see as well the things that are behind, because we have been thinking of that. Okay.
Can I comment?
First thing, Jonathan, I was very surprised to hear you saying you disagreed with this. Because everything you said, I think, yeah, he's right, that's spot on. so certainly the thing about the fact that in any club there's people like Andrew and me that do vast amounts of work and lots of people very little, and that's not sustainable. Yep. And I've seen that over and over and over, that things like transition towns in the UK are pretty much falling apart now because all the volunteers have just got bored and other people aren't stepping in. So absolutely right. And the things that work, I mean, we've set up a number of cooperatives to do a permaculture and a whole wheat bakery and an organic veg shop. And if you have something that produces money and is trading, then they survive and they work. which is exactly why when Martin approached us with the idea of the certification co-op, we thought it was a great idea. We hope that would generate money, we can start to employ people to do work, and we can turn it into much more of a training organisation. And then the question which we're grappling with at the moment is how we maintain the sense of the community, which we all have, and carry on doing the things which are very important to all of us, and make that viable in the long term. So going back to your points about producing applications, that's exactly why we brought Steve Bruce's work up, because Steve does really beautiful stuff, and his graphics. He's got it looks like a Nintendo game where you're going down a road, and that's the business going through its environment. And there's a dashboard like you'd have on a car with all the KPIs on and stuff, and he's doing really beautiful stuff. All the data comes in continuously in real time from these businesses he works with. The data drives the models. You can click on the recursions and get VSMs all over. I mean, the stuff's just extraordinary. I mean, when you say Martin, it's just wonderful. So if we can get that to a stage where Steve can sell it, if we can make it into an app which is either reasonably priced or, as Andrew says, free, I'd be surprised if it could be free. But if it works and if it's as powerful as we think it is, then that could be a real breakthrough, and that could be the sort of thing that any business can buy and start using it. And whether it sticks or not remains to be seen, but I would like to think it will.
Something else. A very important reason. We are getting very old. And as you say, we are getting very old. So we won't be here for a long time. We are aware of that. So the very important reason of the Metaphorum wanting to jump into this new cooperative is to have empowered the new generation to take over and continue this. So this is an invitation, this is one of the ideas. We need to be very creative in terms of who wants to come with new ideas, with new challenges, with new responses to be part of us and to become the new leaders of this community, because that's the main thing that we want to do with this new stage of development of the platform.
Does it make you feel better for the moment?
Yeah. I've still got a lot to say.
So maybe someone else wants to step in as well?
So first of all, it's an honor. Usually I have the pictures and your names on the books next to my bed on my nightstand. No, it's true, really. I have a little bit of comment and a question. What I missed a little bit is I come from a different direction. Every successful framework I see, like Lean or Agile or Safe, who really make the big scaling, so these are the hyperscalers, they have two things or three things. One thing is very crisp, what is the benefit? So what do I get? What does it cost to implement something in a company, and what do I get? I'm missing that a little bit. Could you name it? So basically, hey, if you use VSM, your decision speed goes up from 30 to 60%. So these crisp KPIs for marketing. I know sometimes it sounds a little bit like bullshit bingo, but that's how business is. Yeah, I think, Martin, you know that best. The buttons you have to push at the executives. And for example, Safe is doing a very good job in selling this with customer stories and the success things. And the question would be, do we have that numbers? Could you provide that? And could you be more transparent or aggressive in selling? Then the next point is, you are sometimes, forgive me, a little bit in love with your model. And the model is great, don't misunderstand me, I love it also. But there's a world around, especially when you come from business, from economics, there's a world around. And you're dealing with that only with a VSM, but to run a whole company, there's more to it. There are the processes also. I know you don't ignore them, but what I'm missing is a little bit of big picture. How does it look in the world when you apply VSM and you apply, I don't know, Agile, you apply Lean, you apply whatever you want. I don't know that, but how does it look then in reality? And I think still, when you look up VSM stuff, videos or whatever, or you read books, it's always only about the model of Stanford Beer. Yes, it's complicated to understand it. You can write a lot of books. But what I'm missing is the big picture. How does the world look when you apply it as an example? And the third thing, and then I'm done talking, is in my experience, most transformations, also with applying Agile, fail because of mindset. Missing mindset of the people who apply the model. And this is also one of the main reasons, I think, why in Lean there's a house of Lean, there's a mindset collection. Very crisp. In Agile, in Scrum, we have the manifesto. A very short, nice description about the mindset we have. In SAFe, we have 10 principles. And do you plan to come up with something? I know you have these principles like subsidiarity, autonomy, but they are so hidden. Do you plan to bring it more prominent, like maybe like on the first page, catchy? These are our VSM principles we live up to, and if you don't like these principles, don't apply VSM, because it will be what?
Well, there's a lot to say now. First of all, maybe what we're trying to do is to provide managers, business, non-business, small, large organizations with a language, a model with a language also, so they can develop their own solutions. So we try to make clear that VSM doesn't answer your questions, it asks the questions that you need to solve for your own organization, which I think is an extremely important mechanism for transformation. So that people start talking the language, and therefore I very much deny the assumption of most of my former colleagues to say, well, apply the Bible system model in your consulting, but don't talk about it, right? Do it just for yourself, but just talk to managers with the outcome of your insights. I deny that. I think managers have to learn that language because it's an add-on to structural processes.
Yeah.
It's something different. And therefore it needs its own language, and they need to learn that language, as in former times people had to learn double entry bookkeeping because the world was becoming more complex than before, so they had to deal with it. And it's a certain struggle at the beginning, but either you do it or you don't do it, and if it's necessary, and in the VUCA world nowadays, as you mentioned, Jonathan, also before, we just need that kind of language. It's the language of steering through rough winds, so to speak. And then, as I mentioned before, having a scientific background becomes an advantage rather than a disadvantage in terms of perception. Oh, it's academic, I don't want to deal with it because I'm a practitioner. And I think that's exactly also the point where the benefit lies. That was your first point. The benefit, I think, if I talk to managers, I talk to them about their decision structure, the communication structure. I don't talk to them about the model and about organizations, but the decision structure. Especially in complex organizations with different levels of management, like a large hospital, for example, or like a large enterprise like Bosch, for example. That kind of question, who is taking what kinds of decisions, and what decisions have to be taken so that an organization stays viable in the long run, and how do you communicate these things? This is where you're really touching the nerves of people, because they know, managers know, that's where we have our problems. Because the wrong people are taking the wrong decisions based on wrong information, and it's communicated very badly. I've seen that in 30 years of practice, and I think that's exactly where the benefit is, and therefore it's so important to make clear viable system model is not about structured org charts, it's not about processes, it's an add-on. It's not in competition with what you already have in your organization. It makes everything, it brings everything together so that it makes sense in terms of a functional organization.
My only ask is if you can quantify it and show it, how much benefit do we generate by doing that addition?
Yes, yes.
It's
There
just
was an interesting, I think it was a doctoral thesis by Michael Pfiffner, I think. I'm not, it's not a relative of mine. He researched on the impact of organizations that were working with the value system versus the ones that are not working with it, and the outcome was that the resilience, the viability of organizations was really correlating to, I think, 0.8% or something, so really strong correlation, which showed that organizations that work with the value system or structure along the value system are really more resilient and more able to function long term than other ones. Mm-hmm. So there has been some research, but I think there could be more than that.
Just my perspective on this, I think that all what you are asking us to do, we want to do. We are aware, we are very aware. I think that what we are also trying to do is to sort of combine the strengths of a really, really deep, long experience practice using the VSM in businesses and long experience teaching, educating with the VSM and doing VSM in other contexts, more community, non-for-profits, governments and cooperatives and so on. So we are trying to put things together. But we are aware that we need to come up with these criteria, very clear criteria, these points that you say why it has survived all these fashions, these management fashions. What is it that makes it unique and that will convince a manager to say, okay, I would like to go. My experience is that when people learn the VSM, people get the stickiness, yeah? Because it opens your eyes to a way of understanding an organization that is systemic, is holistic. It's not just thinking of accountability or finances or marketing or whatever, it's just seeing at the relationship between the different functions and the way that the way people relate in certain recurrent patterns of interactions result in more effective or less effective ways of organizing, more effective or less effective ways of producing results and services. So that's something that other fashion in management don't provide together, this holistic, this systemic view of organizations. And I think that, at least for my students, and there are several here, my ex-PhD students and the ex-master students, this is what is attractive, and what once they learn, they want to continue learning. And I think that has been the experience of all of us who met Metaphorum. Once you learned, it opens your eyes to a new way of understanding organizations that none of the other approaches do in so much depth. And it's the kind of learning that you can continue the rest of your life learning. Okay? You need to continue learning. It's very, very deep learning.
Angela,
Yeah, a couple of comments. You were saying how with when you were dealing with Agile, you had problems with mindset. And one of the things you notice when you're teaching the VSM is that at the end of the course, there's usually one or two people come up and say, that was just absolutely brilliant. I've been waiting for this all my life. I've always realised that the way that we've been running things, there must be a better way to do it, and the VSM is pointing in that direction. So they get it. And then there was one man who came up after a course, and he said he'd never heard such a lot of self-laudatory drivel, which I thought was beautifully expressed. And there's this clear thing of, some people think systemically, naturally, but as I think Jonathan said, we're all taught to think in a linear, logical, very reductionist way from birth, and all the way through school and university and jobs. There's this mindset which is kind of imposed on us. We're kind of brainwashed into this. And some people very naturally jump out of that, others don't. So I think that's one thing. The other question you asked was about autonomy and how much you emphasise it. And I think it's a matter of context, because I've had this conversation with Martin on a number of occasions, and we work in places like hospitals and schools, and particularly in a hospital, where all the people doing the operational work, the doctors and the nurses, are the best educated, and they're probably highly intelligent people. And there are managers above them that know nothing about medicine, but there's a status thing in their hierarchical structure. And if you talk just really generally about autonomy for the doctors and the nurses, it makes perfect sense. And that's really, we found that a really clear way in. And then you hit the structure of the hospital and the finances and the budgeting, which are usually really difficult to work with. So certainly from our point of view, there are times when emphasising the whole essence of autonomous systems one, and then the meta system who provide a service to look after, as Stafford said, the operational units so they cohere into the totality of a viable system. And that works beautifully in some contexts, but not in others. So I think it's very much horses for courses. You need different approaches in different situations. I mean, there was the best intervention I did was in a permaculture organisation in the UK, and I was going through all these principles of the VSM. And there's always these points where you think, I'm going to have to spend the next hour explaining this, and I present the idea, and they all went, yeah, well that's obvious, isn't it? Move on. And because they think systemically, and they're looking at systems of plants and agriculture, and it's very much a systemic, quite overtly systemic approach to growing, that they just got it really fast. And I did the thing much faster than I'd ever done before, and they implemented it very well. So again, this whole thing of context and different approaches.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thanks. Yeah. So we can now. Do you have a question?
If I can put in a brief question.
Yeah. Do you want to, I think we can spend. We have a question as well. We will take these two questions. Quick questions, please. Take the seat. And then we will go to the next session where you can have a deep dive on the posters with these three. Yeah. So, yeah.
Sorry.
I'll try to be very brief. Given that those who stand on the shoulders of giants often don't hesitate to trample them into the ground and maybe even bury them in the mud, I think this is particularly true in academia, where the pressure to publish will often force people to take shortcuts, read, without putting the time or effort to actually understand what it is they're writing about. As a result, a lot of people come to the VSM with a distorted and often toxified picture of what it is. So this makes me wonder whether a better approach in some cases might not be to start with a clear exposition of a very, very challenging situation that the audience might not actually see as being in any way tractable, and then show how a very satisfactory solution is being produced, and then use that as a way to introduce the VSM while cutting out some of the prejudices. There are a couple of my colleagues agree with each other and always insist that the VSM is a subject that should only be discussed between consenting adults. I don't agree with that at all. I think the detail is absolutely important, but I understand what they're saying. When presented to people without context, it's often completely off-putting, preventing from people from then putting in the effort to understand why they're being told this. So my question came before that statement. It's the bit about whether it might not be best to show the beginning and end before actually showing a way through it. Sorry. Stick a question mark on the end of it and call it a question.
Well, I like the challenge, and I think that's precisely what we are trying to find out. I mean, for us in this application research group, these are the main questions. How do we break this dilemma of making the VSM understandable and without losing the value? Because the problem is, and we've been discussing many ways of creatively representing, for instance, the very diagrams. The diagrams are off-putting for everyone. People that doesn't have a background on engineering will hate them. But it's all this secret kind of electrical engineering looking, how can we change it? How can we present the VSM in a much more organic way, intuitive way, that people won't be upset about it? And we have done the exercise between us, and there are really interesting possibilities of reinventing the way of presenting the VSM. What you say is another alternative. Let's go reverse engineering in a practical application. Start from what happened then, and then engineer back. How did change was produced, and how the VSM helped So I think that this is a kind of a creative ideas that we would like to explore together. We don't have an answer, we have ideas, and we want more creative ideas from all of you. So that would be my point. Yeah.
Also brief in 2 sentences, I agree with what you say, and I agree also about the importance of examples and references and so on. Absolutely. However, I think the biggest challenge is to overcome that toxic perception of what it is in terms of putting it into the old categories. If you put a new idea in the old categories, structure, process, like anatomy, physiology, but it's something else, then you just getting diluted and misinformed, and you're losing it then. So I think that's really the biggest challenge to make clear. This is not about structure, it's not about processes, it's about the neurology, it's about the business and communication structure, and we have a science about control and communication that helps us to know what needs to be done in an organization.
I never don't start with the VSM. I suppose because, I taught this course for about 10 years in Colombia to people who spoke very little English, which was somewhat of a challenge. And the first year I did it really badly, and went away and nobody understood it, and I'd done a really bad job. So the next year I did it a bit better, and after 4 years I was happy with it, and from then on it changed very little. So I kind of feel I spent enormous amounts of time and energy getting the feedback from the students, because I've always thought that teaching, if you're not learning as much as the students are learning, then you're not doing a very good job. And I like to think that Angela and I, between us now, found ways to express the model in a way that is accessible. So most of the times when we introduce it, people seem to be reasonably happy with it, wouldn't you say? So I think if you can get to that point where there are ways of expressing it without going into Ashby's law of requisite variety and astomonic reticulums and all that stuff that staff had learnt those words, and just get the model over in its basic terms, then I don't think there's a problem starting with the model. But like we were saying before, the context in which you do that is always really critical.
Yes, and just to support what Martin was saying, my own understanding, the way that it has worked for me as a consultant, is by teaching the VSM to the people in the place where I'm working, because for me the magic comes from people being able to talk about the different kind of systems and create this collective mental model of an organization in a language, in a way that is completely disjointed of other things. When you put people around and they understand the basic concepts, this is a system 1, this is an operation, this is a system 2, 3, 4, 5, and then they say, now I understand why this is a different level of recursion. We are mixing up these things. This is a system 4 issue that hasn't been discovered, and it is this meta language, understanding this meta language, that creates this really interesting experience, learning experience for people. And then once you are gone, they have got the knowledge, and they can continue using the VSM in their own practice. So I completely agree with Martin that it is important to teach these ideas, and the challenge is how to teach them in a simple way, in a way that is not scary but attractive. How can we change that? Yeah.
Can I just one quick reaction to this from your side, please? Because we have someone else waiting.
Yes, certainly. I don't disagree with anything you're saying, but I think you're talking about a collection of students who are already receptive to the ideas. I'm talking about those who are less likely to be receptive, but need to know.
So I was talking also about that, about situations, practical situations where you are going to help a group of people to think about their own organization, not in the classroom.
Yes, schools and hospitals, particularly for us in the last few years, where the ideas have been accepted and continued. I'm not gonna add more, but I would.
Okay, thanks for your
we have the poster sessions to continue for a bit these conversations.
So just
So I'll try to be very brief. Okay, that's all.
Very briefly, but I would like to give another perspective, because I'm slightly an outsider, also institutionally and to some extent independent. First of all, it could take us hours to discuss this in detail. First. Secondly, I've done research on complex systems for quite a few years, and I could prepare something, sociology of doing systems research. And here's, I have quite a huge database. The first issue is that the generations in science. It seems to me that this phenomenon also is affecting VSM, so cybernetics. We know that the discussions about cybernetics, about fortunes and misfortunes of cybernetics. So first you have to remember this. There are some problems concerning the fashion in science. Now we have a problem in complex systems when people apply the term complexity, but the fashion of using complexity in business management and in international relations, which was quite popular, say, in the 90s, in the early 20th century, is gone. There are some practical problems with publications. So first, the problem of the generation problem in science. Then I will reduce this question to the problem of sociology of science and politics in science. Influence in science. I mean, in my approach, this discussion is partly based on the question how to return to the mainstream of research and mainstream of business management, business consulting, business advice. Please correct me, but I was absolutely surprised when I discovered that once the book of Spencer Brown got the review in Nature by Stafford Beer. You know, of course, so it was the mainstream at that time. So third is the question of this generation. So coming back to the political aspects of this, that how to return to the mainstream. Nobody puts in doubt the intellectual value of VSM. Definitely, I don't think that's it. So I'm trying to be very brief. So how to return? The point in management also is to persuade. We know about re-engineering. So they say, oh, nobody, something new, and because they want to sell it. There were some critics. So it's a problem of persuasion, consulting, and in management. Of course, we could talk more. And now I have two specific questions. What about the center in St. Gallen, which followed the ideas of Stafford Beer in Europe? You know, there is in continental Europe. Britain is not, but it's continental Europe. Good. There's the problem. First, it's important question because some lessons could be learned. And I have a specific proposal, just to test it, and we can talk about some other aspects. Just to submit a publication to a conference of the American Association of Management, Academy of Management, I'm a member of them. This year I don't have capacity. And just to test what could be the answer, the reviewers, what they will write about this, because it's the mainstream, they represent the mainstream. Of course, I could say more, but I have time limits. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. I guess that the issue of politics, the politics of science, I think that it is undoubtedly one of the constraints that we have of dissemination. We could spend hours talking about the politics of sciences, and we no doubt this is something that is a deterrent. It's a deterrent, especially knowing that the top journals, for instance, normally have editorial boards that are very reluctant to new theories that are not those that the editorial board members are promoting. And at that level, let's say we may not have been very effective playing that kind of politics. I think that this community has been quite an independent kind of system thinkers, and we are not very good in playing these politics. But even without playing these politics, I think that we have managed to get to top journals. And this, in this way, not from the top down, but from the bottom up, we are beginning to be part of the game, let's say. St. Gallen's Management School is very, Marcus Schoninger is part of the community, very active part of the community. We were with him, Raúl Espejo, José Pérez Ríos, last week in Oxford in the WOS conference. They are very active in the Metaphorum. José Pérez Ríos is part of this research group. Marcus is one of our academic advisors that will participate in the process of certification. So they say that we are together. We are part of the same community.
What about Fredmund Malik?
Yeah, as well. Fredmund is our next speaker in the webinar series. We have a very close relationship. Martin used to work with Malik for many years. Metaphorum has, Alena has been very part of the board of directors as well of the Teams Integrity Incorporated before. We have a very close relationship with Fredmund, Constantine, and all the Maliks. And precisely what we're trying to do is to create a community that have access to this knowledge and that can help to overcome the issues of copyright and all that. And we are in continuous conversations with Malik about that. We are in this, today, Constantine was writing saying, sorry that we couldn't make. So Metaphorum is let's say, linking all these different communities.